Mile on.
All right. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in with us once more. Welcome to the Conscious Together live stream. And this, as a reminder, will be the last live stream until the second week of October.
Can you hear?
Something went wrong there.
Oh,
the joy of a live stream.
I think I muted my
joy of a live stream. It's okay. It's okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Conscious Together live stream. We're back again today. Thank you for joining us. And this will be the last stream until the second week of October. So it's about 5 weeks without us live. We will continue to upload snippets and tips and tools and extracts from our last 15 weeks this week, I think it is, live sessions. So there'll be plenty to keep you connected and up to date and mindful in the channel. So don't go away, keep subscribed, keep the notification live. And there will be lots of good stuff. And we will be back with loads of fresh energy, loads of fresh ideas in the second week of October to continue our mindful experience together. So here I am with my good friends, Oliver and Avanti, as always. And today we're going to explore the question of consciousness itself. And it's a term that is obviously part of our day-to-day vernacular in respect of our understanding of our lives and our sense of self, the concept of the ego, perhaps. But what we're going to look at today is various approaches to understanding consciousness, our relationship with it, what it might mean for us, how we can improve our consciousness, our relationship with our conscious selves, and where that might take us. And we're going to bring a few perspectives. So I'm hoping to bring some of the interesting reflections from the world of neuroscience. Oliver's hoping to bring some perspective from the Buddhist tradition. And Avanti's going to introduce us to some of the concepts from Krishnamurti. And so hopefully this combination of approaches, this combination of discussion will lead us to some interesting discussion. We might not reach a conclusion, we might disagree, but hopefully we'll all learn something new, something that we can apply to our own practice and understanding of the mind. So, with that said, Oliver, Avanti, is there anything else I've missed from the introduction?
Not that I know of. I think we're doing great.
Oh, good.
All right, perfect, super, thank you. Okay, so I mean, at the simplest level, the sense of consciousness is our self-awareness, right? And this is also identified as the sense of ego. And it's interesting to note that a lot of meditation traditions, mindful traditions, talk about an ultimate state of contemplation as that dissolution of the ego, the dissolution of self. And so it's very interesting that our immediate felt sense of consciousness is very much rooted in that. Our sense of self-awareness, our sense of our own mortality, which is definitely a mixed blessing. Obviously, being aware of the finitude of our lives can fill us with anxiety, terror, existential dread in the manner that our dogs and cats, to the best of our knowledge, are wonderfully oblivious to. But it does afford us the opportunity to channel our attention, to focus our efforts towards longer term goals and work towards something greater than ourselves through our families, through our communities, through our societies. So it's definitely an interesting thing to live with. And the noise in our head, our sense of self, our sense of consciousness, can be very challenging to live with. It can feel a little bit like our conscience, slightly different from consciousness, but our sense of conscience and the inner voice within us that tells us whether we are living up to our potential, whether we are missing something, whether we are abiding by a code of morals that we might choose to apply to our lives. So there's lots of things there to chew through. And I say, once I pause for breath and let my colleagues step in with some of their perspectives, I hope to bring us back to some of the perspectives from a more neuroscientific perspective and see where that takes us. So, Avanti, would you mind kicking off with some reflections on what is consciousness from your perspective?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. And I think this is such a fantastic topic. While I take pride in the fact that the company I have put together is called Conscious Together, the idea of the word consciousness came from the time when I was learning about consciousness from a teacher. It was a Vedantic teacher, and he started off with saying, you know how there is electricity running through everywhere in our homes, and electricity has the power to light up our bulbs and tubes and, whatever form it takes, it makes it work. And consciousness, he mentioned, was akin to electricity. It is something that everybody has, no matter who we are. It could be a sentient being, it could be a non-sentient being. But the fact that consciousness shows up in us humans, it lights our soul up because we're a part of the bigger universal consciousness. And so that is the viewpoint that I have sort of been part of. But again, this may not be entirely true. And that's why we're having this discussion. What I would like to start off saying is also that I am not any sort of authority in being able to talk about this. I feel like from my perspective, I'm an inquirer, just the way Krishnamurti says that we are inquirers, we're lay people inquiring about consciousness. And when you see consciousness in the perspective of, say electricity, that it's omnipresent, that it's present everywhere, and what our conscience is the awareness we have inside of us on our consciousness at that one point, right? So we are carriers of consciousness, or we are emerging beings from the consciousness that is all pervading. That is how I imagine it. Like if you were to see it, I feel like we are subsets of a bigger canvas. And that is why they say that our thinking, our conditioning, our beliefs we're all still conscious together, because if one person believes and tells the other, then we are all starting to believe the same way. And that is how we become conscious together. So it depends on what story you are telling. If it's a story of hope and trust, then that is how we become more conscious. But if it's the other way, then we also affect each other. So that is sort of my pivot into consciousness from a Vedantic tradition as well, and also from how Krishnamurti speaks about it. Such a fascinating teacher. He was, I think, one of the pioneers of how mindfulness sort of came together. But he talks about the fact that we are watching our own consciousness, but it's actually, the fact is that we are consciousness itself. And so how can we watch consciousness? Because then it would mean consciousness is watching each other, watching itself. And hence the observer becomes the observed. And it's a beautiful thought. I mean, it completely blew my mind away when you see it. And again, if you look at the Big Bang Theory and these sort of olden, evolutionary theories, I think this all-pervading consciousness sort of ties into it. But again, I may not be entirely accurate. And this is why, it's like walking on eggshells, this subject of consciousness. I hope that's a start. Thank you, Lauren.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you, Avanti. Really interesting. And yeah, I mean, I stress that none of us claim to have the answer here, right? And obviously there are people out there who claim to know absolutely what is the truth of various things in the universe and the world and in our experience in life. But certainly from a scientific perspective, this is certainly work in progress, and science cannot currently explain consciousness. We have theories, and you only have to look at the various traditions, spiritual traditions around, that have different perspectives and different takes on consciousness and the experience, to recognize that this is a mystery, a personal and a collective mystery that we are all traveling through together. So yeah, I think that's very nicely put, Avanti. Thank you. Oliver, have you got any opening thoughts that you can share with us from the sort of the Buddhist tradition? That'd be wonderful.
Absolutely. And I think it was very interesting that Avanti brought up the Vedantic, right, view. In fact, from what I have learned from Buddhism, this is, first of all, I think it agrees on this consciousness, observe consciousness itself, and the analogy of electricity, it is there. This is no difference from the Buddhism, of course. And I guess a couple of things when we explain a philosopher's system, some of the things need to do is to define some of the terms, and then maybe the boundaries, things like that. I guess in lots of time when we hear a certain term or name of a philosophical system, automatically we have an impression, we have our own definition of it. So it's important to clarify. It was amazing to me over the many years of study, like the year 1 or the year 0, even the years minus, you have different understanding. Because in my mind, Buddhism was something like, you burn incense, you respect, do good deeds, statues, temples. But then, after many years, I realized there's a lot more than that. There was not even touching the essence at all. Some of the, at a certain level, I think the consciousness to what Avanti has brought up, Buddhism has that. You have the consciousness. The consciousness, I guess, unlike the discussion we had before we started live streaming, like, is anything new? It's there. There are beings, sentient beings, not only human, any type of beings, especially sentient beings. Non-sentient beings are different thing, but we still can say there's a consciousness. So it is there. If there's anything that's not that way, let's say, then it's not the essence. It's like there's a mirror and then there's a dust on it. The conscious itself is like the mirror. It is always there. It's never disappeared. However, the consciousness, the way we think consciousness, maybe as well as everything else, is actually made up. I think Lauren also brought this up too, right? There is the illusion, right? The closest analogy is the dream, right? Imagine if we are actually making everything up, right? With our ultimate consciousness, then we are in the dream. Then what is consciousness, right? From the ultimate level is that in the analogy of a dream, is the state of waking up, right? However, it is pretty challenging, for example, talking about or study, research the state of waking up while we are sleeping, right? So that's the one, I think one level of Buddhism has been teaching. So I guess number one, you have the consciousness is always there. It is possible to wake up. There are different ways to wake up or to realize what the real consciousness is, even in the state of dreaming. For most people or most beings, we are in a state of dreaming. Well, hopefully it makes sense. This is has whatever Avanti has talked included, but there is one, or just from another perspective. For example, the analogy of dreaming. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so, Oliver. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm hearing. What you were talking about there got me thinking that actually we often confuse consciousness with thoughts. And that, I think, is the essence, perhaps, or in my interpretation of the essence of that, the concept of the dream and the waking up, because we are so tempted to lose ourselves in the stream of our thoughts and think that we are our thoughts. And when we are able to realize to wake up from that attachment to each and every thought, because they're so mesmerizing, the movie of our lives, the dream. Yeah. That's one of the fundamental sort of breakthrough moments, I guess, from a mindful perspective. Yeah,
exactly. And can I just add a little bit, because thank you for reminding that. When using terms, of course, we understand terms differently. Avanti uses the awareness in the Buddhism teaching. I think luminosity, awareness, or sometimes, of course, if you go to the Tibetan Buddhism, it uses the great or the Mahamudra in Sanskrit, or the Mahasandhi, meaning the great perfection or the great seal, right? That term are used to name the highest level of consciousness. Thoughts definitely are not the high or highest level. Thoughts are the things as you defined, the delusion. I think that's also why when we do the mindfulness meditation, which has its origin in Buddhism, we watch our thoughts and we try to realize why those thoughts are just thoughts. They're not fact. So what is the fact? What is the reality? Reality is the other name of the ultimate consciousness or those Mahamudras. So yeah, there are different levels. And of course, when there is a thought, again, ultimately speaking, even when we are in any discussion, we'll put them in a book or we're verbally talking about it, or even without, right? Keep silent, but there is something there. So in the Diamond Sutra, there is a famous quote called, whatever that there is a characteristics, then it is not true, or this is a delusion. Characteristics almost meaning anything you could think of. So that's why I think in the Buddhism tradition, it's different than, certain way that we understand science or daily life. We try to come to a conclusion, okay, this is true, let's get it. It's just opposite, right? Remove what you have right now. All those are the characteristics. All those are the dust. Remove them. Don't mind, no concern about where the mirror is. If you remove all the dust, then the mirror is there. And the mirror is the consciousness, the ultimate one.
Nice. Thank you. Like that. Avanti, was there anything you wanted to, I got the impression you wanted to step in at some point and add something, but no pressure if you didn't.
Yeah, no, I think it's time for you to speak. We could just go on this, and this won't be a fair discussion. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Well, perhaps we can pause here. And if this is a natural break, then if Oliver, you're happy to lead us in the opening practice, our first practice of today's session, and then after that, perhaps I'll talk a little bit about the sort of the science findings in quotes, such as they are. Caveat: they're always a work in progress, and then we can take the conversation perhaps to how we can improve our relationship with consciousness, how we can improve our consciousness, higher states of consciousness, or whatever. We'll take that there. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Lauren. And I think that's perfect timing because we're talking about thoughts, or maybe how untrue is thoughts. So I just like to lead a short meditation on some contemplation on thoughts, or it is also a mindfulness meditation itself, for sure. Okay, if you don't mind, let's choose a comfortable position. Preferably, we can sit straight. Of course, if you prefer to any other position or lying down, that's all fine. But according to at least my personal experience, when we sit straight, let our body support itself. That's usually we're in a more wake or conscious state. It's helpful that we can realize certain things that's closer to the reality. Okay, let's relax our shoulder, arms, torso, legs and feet. If you're sitting on a chair, you can lean forward a little bit, so leave the back of the chair. Soft your gaze, or if you prefer, you can even close your eyes. Let's start with watching our breath. You can choose your anchor point, either the tip of the nose, the nostril area, or maybe the chest or belly. Watch the breath in and out. Or the rise and fall of the abdomen. Let's do this for a few moments. For most of us, unavoidably, our minds start to wander. That's totally fine. When you spot it, then it is already a success in this meditation. Bring the mind back to the breath. So we can watch now if there are any thoughts rising. We can watch how They arise, they stay, and then disappear. Just like the cloud in the sky. At this point, I think we can compare and do a little bit contemplation of what we have discussed today. Thoughts, consciousness, awareness, or may even be reality. Are they the same? Well, thoughts arise, stay, and then flow away. Is the awareness there? Does that awareness change at all? There may even be emotions, same as thoughts, rise, stay, and disappear. In this meantime, does that awareness or consciousness disappear too? So those clouds, those emotions and thoughts are like a movie. Movie started, movie ended. Is that awareness as audience there? Okay, next contemplation could be a little tricky. Feel free if you don't want to do it. Is that idea of awareness, consciousness, a movie itself? Okay, without going too much tricky, let's get back to our breathing. Watch our breath for a few more moments. Okay, I think that's brings to the end of this short meditation / contemplation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oliver. Really good. It's so helpful to have practices on thoughts directly. I really do find those very beneficial and very interesting. So thank you. So back to consciousness. What is consciousness? And from the perspective of some of the sort of the science, and this is a very much an angle rooted in sort of maths and physics. It's the lens of aware attention that we can bring to the world around us, because we are assailed by approximately 11 million bits of data every second that are received by our body's nervous system through our 5 senses. 11 million bits of data every second come in to the sort of the brain and the brainstem, the spinal column, the nervous center of the body, the receivers of the body. And our conscious attention is only able to contain approximately 10 bits of that. So that's 1/1,000,000th of the data out there. So there is, and this is often a sort of metaphor used in mindfulness. There's sort of consciousness is the sky in which the clouds pass, for example, or the river in which the leaves are flowing down. Those are often sort of metaphors for the space of consciousness and our tendency to get distracted by small elements of it. So from a sort of that sort of perspective, the suggestion would be that's the consciousness, the space of consciousness would be the 11 million bits of data. But actually we can only be consciously attentive to somewhere in the region of 10 bits of data. So that's an incredibly narrow focus, which is where I think through the practices we're invited to focus on something very narrow, very specific, such as the breath, such as the experience of sound, such as the thoughts that pop in and out. And there are also open practice meditations, which I personally quite enjoy, where you just open to whatever you notice, but trying to hold that conscious space open as possible, because the conscious window from a scientific perspective is like this spotlight, is this lens that wants to attach to something to pay attention to. And there's merit in that. It helps us learn complex things that we probably wouldn't be able to otherwise, right? The ability to learn to drive a motor vehicle, the ability to learn to play a musical instrument are almost certainly fundamentally rooted in our ability to direct our conscious attention. And then the more familiar we become with those processes, the more they become part of the unconscious background process that our brain manages unconsciously without having to think about it. Most of the time when you're driving, terrifying though this may sound, you're not paying attention to the hand movements that you're doing, changing the gear, steering the steering wheel, doing the indicator, none of that is conscious until something tends to go wrong. And then you're brought back from whatever else the brain is processing in the background to the very moment that you're in. And then you are acutely aware. And there's also this concept of the I and the me, and I being the conscious lens, this narrow spotlight of 10 bits of data or so, and then the me being all the other thousands, millions of processes that the body is going through every single moment. And I've sort of got this, and then this is just hypothetical. This is purely an idea in my mind. I haven't backed this up with anything, any research or anything like that. But our consciousness is, in a sense, a bit of a luxury, because the more pressure we're under, the more danger we find ourselves in, the me, the automatic process of the body, takes over. And if you find yourself in a sort of a very threatening life or death situation, you don't have a conscious awareness. People often report, there was this no conscious awareness. They just reacted. Things just happened. And however that planned out, it was an automatic response, not a conscious response. And in fact, again, scientifically, our conscious lens, our conscious attention lags behind everything else that actually happens by about half a second. Now, that doesn't sound a lot, but this has been done through repeated tests. So there's lots of collaborative evidence around this that says that there is this delay of half a second between a sensory input being received by the body and it becoming part of our conscious attention. And also there's a minimum threshold, there's a minimum sensory input required to trigger a conscious response. And again, this has been consistently proved. And this is where you get the research into subliminal messaging and subliminal advertising. And the fact that even though we aren't consciously aware of something, it is still being taken into the me concept of the human engine. Our body, our mind takes this data in and stores it, and it can then, you know, the advantage to advertising is you can be watching something and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I fancy eating a candy bar or something, and you've got no conscious realization that you've been coached into doing that. Now, you can obviously use that for selfish, nefarious purposes, or you can use that positively, right? You can use subliminal programming to condition yourself to do positive behaviors that you want to do. So it's a really interesting area of research. However, so in essence, the scientific lens talks about consciousness as this narrow focus, this spotlight, which is often talked about within the frame of mindfulness. And that lens of attention is only capable of 10 bits versus the 11 million bits of data that are constantly around us. That there is a lag between the sense of me, the automatic processes of the body and the mind, and then what becomes conscious. And that is approximately half a second. And this invites lots of questions about free will and the illusion perhaps of the choice that we feel we have in a moment or don't have in a moment, because the body has already started the motion, right? So even if you're thinking that these tests have been done with this sort of thing and it's fascinating, but you think, well, I'm going to move my finger now, but actually the before you even thought the thought, I'm going to move my finger now, the neurons have already fired in the brain connecting that process. It's totally amazing and befuddling, and it does create so many questions about the experience that we have, what we are aware of, what we're not aware of, and that's a fascinating landscape. So
wow, I mean, it's one thing, and that's where the what you said about, I mean, from a scientific perspective, so many scientists have now tried to call it the hard problem of consciousness. They're trying to solve it, but at various levels, they haven't been able to find out how a person who is in comatose condition is still able to breathe or is still able to survive it. And I think that sort of question will keep raising its head until we have scientists who are actively trying to find answers. So here's to them. That is a wonderful thought. Thank you, Laurie.
Yeah, and I think it's the mystery, isn't it? Of however you explore the mystery, and science is often that sort of almost a spiritual quest, if you like, depending on who you talk to about this, because you're pursuing the inquiry of truth, and that is essentially a spiritual journey, as I think Jordan Peterson points out routinely, right, in his challenge with staunch scientists, atheist scientists. So it is, whether you're looking at a spiritual path or whether you've got a religious idea, it is this sort of exploration into the mystery, the questioning, the searching for the truth. Very Mulder and Scully. Brought our stream back to the X-Files. That's brilliant bit of grounding. So
and the quest goes on.
The quest goes on. All right. So perhaps then, as we are moving through our stream quite profoundly here, methods for expanding our consciousness. How do we use our consciousness more consciously, more constructively, guys? Have you Avanti, do you have any sort of perspectives that you'd like to bring in anything around that?
I think in my understanding, so to say, and again, it could be limited. So that's a disclaimer I always put out. In this now, wasn't it Daniel Kahneman, where he says the thinking fast and thinking slow, where he brings in the system two thinking perspective, where he says that we're thinking slower, we're thinking more mindfully, we're thinking more consciously about more longer term consequences of longer term choices, right? So healthier eating when we're stressed. We could be binge eating, opening our refrigerator 12 a.m., having scoops of ice cream. But another way to handle that is to sit up and say, read a book, or maybe just try to meditate, or, it could be a different way of handling that sort of getting up episode. When we are able to step into the system two, slower way of thinking, in my opinion, is where I think we are becoming more conscious about the choices we want to make. Then we're able to step back, look at all the movies that are being shown by our thoughts, and say, oh, actually not this movie, not this one either, not this one too. I'm just going to base it on the facts that I have in front of me. This is just an emotion or a thought or something like an urge that I want to do right now, but it's not going to help me in the long run. So I push all that aside and go with what is the best way to handle a situation in a conflict, in relationships, and so on and so forth. So I think, to me, the system two thinking, I think, helps our consciousness, or brings us closer to who we really are, because it allows this whiz of emotion to settle down, and then we're able to see life without drama or illusion, but as a series of events that are happening on their own, without having to blame it on any one side. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to look into that layer two thinking, and it is building that space, isn't it? It's absolutely getting more capacity to, as you say, see the various dramas, events of life happening, and not necessarily having to attach to them, not necessarily getting sucked into them. Lovely. Thanks, Amanda. Oliver, anything from your perspective?
Sure. Maybe, Lauren, if you don't mind, when the scientists say that we're able only to be conscious at the 1/1,000,000th of what we receive today, is there a limit that doesn't change, or maybe through some training it could change that amount of data we could take?
Yeah, I don't know. There is some variance there, but I think some studies have shown up to 32 bits of data. So that's, but I don't know specifically. It's a good question, and I don't know.
Because that was, again, we're talking about these terms, how we define science and Buddhism again. Along that line, we usually will have, at least from a certain period of time in the history, a limit. For example, the speed of light. Is that like 300,000 kilometers per second? Could that change? I guess if we go to let's say the Buddhism theory, it could, right? All these are not that constant as always. That's the reason I mention this is I think in order for us to be able, like to be more open, a broader consciousness, we first need to know or have that view that it is doable. If there is a limit that already, we put a limit already. Again, looks like in the Buddhism theory, there's no limit, and we can train ourselves. And many of these science study, I'd say, is based on a presumption. Basically, first of all, we are able to we're able to know, let's use that word, or cognize, if that's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Buddhism theory will say we are in a delusion, right? We're deluded, and then every individual may be different too. right? Every individual, even within the scope of human being, not to mention other type of beings, right? And to that, and of course, to human being, we're trainable. Everyone is different, and it is trainable. One way of training, we have discussed this before. There are two type of meditation. One is shamatha, single-pointed focus, like what we do in the focus on the breath, focus on the anchor part of the body. And then there is a vipassana, meaning you open up to everything. And it's interesting, usually the training starts with the ability of being focused, is the shamatha. And also, if you have that level of like single pointed meditation to a certain level of training, once that session of training comes to an end, or that meditation comes to an end, it actually can trigger a bigger opening, or the vipassana. So I think in order for consciousness to work more in a more expanded mode, it is still good to do these, focus on your, most of the mindfulness trainings, right? The focus on your breath, focus on or watching the thoughts and all those, that will be very helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Oliver. And I think back to the sort of the science side of things, I think because a lot of researchers have done tests with sort of enlightened masters and long time practitioners of meditation, haven't they? But I think the studies have focused around sort of the brain scans to see what's going on, and relation to markers of well-being, isn't it? I don't, and again, I don't remember there being, or I'm not aware of, which doesn't any studies around, there's the scale of consciousness in terms of comparing the sort of the responses to either the half-second delay or the 10 to 32 bits of data being the maximum bandwidth for consciousness. So that would be an interesting field of study if that was possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to it. And of course, there's a limitation and presumption. For example, the things or the object of study it can be reflected in the brain, or the neural system that can be detected with the tools that we have. Right? That's all based on that. What if not? Right? I guess we need development of new tools or new means.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where science continually evolves, isn't it? That, as we discover, develop new tools, techniques, then it opens up a new lens for us to look through and possibly learn something new. So fantastic. Thank you. Okay. So, we've got only about 10 minutes left. So, Avanti, would you like to lead us in a practice to bring us towards the end of today's session?
Absolutely. And I feel inspired to sort of do an open awareness meditation, if that works.
Perfect.
Let's begin. We bring ourselves now to a position of comfort, so as to support our body for the next 10 minutes, where our shoulders and feet are rested, our backs are away from our chair backs, and our hands rested on our legs. Starting with inhalation, we begin with taking a few deep breaths here. Inhaling through our nostrils and exhaling through our mouths. And then as we settle into our normal breathing now, bringing our awareness to the breath and where the breath is landing in this moment. To see if our breath is deep or shallow, fast or slow. Simply observing our breath without really wanting to change anything about it. Now opening our sensations, our senses to what we have happening around us. If you hear sounds around you, without really labeling the sound, observing the beginning and the end of that sound. If your thoughts start showing up, just gently reminding yourself to go back to the sound that you were following. If your mind is very busy and extremely wondery, thinking of things that are undone, then simply coming back to your breath, if that is easier to follow. And then when our attention is a little more settled, to bring it back to the surrounding and the sounds that we have around us. It could be the high or low pitched sounds. It could be a fast moving sound. Simply following the sound from the start to the finish. As we gradually move to now paying attention to the sensation we have on our skin. If you have a window open around you, the sensation of the cold air touching your fingertips, or the warmth that you find under the blanket. Simply becoming aware of the sensation they have on your skin without really wanting to change the experience. Continuing to monitor your thoughts, and if your thoughts are taking over, simply gently bring back your attention to your breath and to the sensations back on the skin. Moving on next to the posture you're seated in. Bringing awareness to the sensations inside your body. To see what your body is wanting to show you right now. Do you sense a pleasant sensation somewhere in your body? Or is it one that begs to change position, finish this meditation, or even change the position you're seated in? And without really doing any of this, just being aware of what is showing up for you. No judgment about how much my feet hurt because how much I have done today, but just saying, oh, there is pain in my foot. The hand is slightly sweaty. There is sweat on the tip of my nose. And settling into this sensation, leaning in closer to both pleasant or unpleasant sensations. And as we come to the final part of the meditation, bringing our attention back to our breath now. And observing if it's fast or slow, deep or shallow. Without judgment. As we come back to the room we're seated in, to the mat or chair that we're seated in, onto our computer screens. You can gently rub your palms together and put them on your eyes. They're supposed to give you good energy. The warmth really helps relax your eyes too. So if you've seen either of us do it, that's probably why. But with this, we come to the end of the meditation. And Lauren, I pass the baton over to you.
Thank you very much, Vandy. Lovely, really, really pleasant. Like that a lot. A lovely little medley of exploration there. Nice. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Oliver and Avanti, for a really interesting discussion today. I know we've only probably scratched the surface of consciousness, and there's probably a follow-up begging to be had in the not too distant future. But hopefully, to our audience, this has given you something to ponder over, something to muse over, and let us know what your attitude is to consciousness, what your understanding is, how you have developed your exploration of and your relationship with this incredible phenomenon. So, well, I'm glad I managed to say that word. That normally catches me out to death. So there you are. Thank you once again. Please like, subscribe, and just a reminder, we won't be here for the next 5 weeks as a live show, but there will be updates on the channel regularly. Lots of great stuff to stay tuned to keep you with things to be mindful of over the coming weeks. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.
See you, Oliver.